Listen, somewhere in the distance, a single bell begins to ring. Its sound moves slowly through the air, carried by a cool wind. Each note lingers for a moment, then fades, soft and weightless, like mist sliding over stone. It is the night bell. It calls across the quiet fields and empty streets of a medieval town. The day has ended. Fires are dimmed, doors are closed, and life, for a while, becomes still. You can almost imagine the rooftops, steep and dark beneath the moon, the thin lines of smoke dissolving into the sky. Somewhere, a dog stirs in its sleep. The air smells faintly of wood ash and earth after rain. This is where we begin. Not in the noise of battle or the glare of a royal hall, but in the ordinary hush of an evening centuries ago. A time when people lived by small sounds and smaller lights. When the glow of a candle meant safety, and the sound of the bell meant rest. The bell rings again, and it reminds the town to cover its fires, to keep the warmth inside the home and the danger outside. To sleep under wooden beams beside the gentle breath of family, and let the world beyond the window fade into the dark. You can picture it. Narrow lanes of cobblestone, walls of timber and clay, a lantern swinging slowly in the wind. Inside, a single room filled with whispers and the crackle of fading coals. Children curled under rough blankets, their dreams already wandering to forests and oceans they will never see. For them, tomorrow will be another day of rules and rhythms. The bell that wakes them. The work that fills the hours. The market, the guild, the gossip at the well. But for now, there is peace, a peace made not by freedom, but by the comfort of order. That is the heart of this world, a quiet world built from habits and boundaries, where every sound, every light, every gesture had meaning. There were rules for how to live, how to work, how to eat, how to speak. Some were harsh, some were kind, all were born from the same wish: to survive together, to make sense of an uncertain life. You may think of those times as dark, but darkness was never the enemy. It was the canvas for the small lights to shine against. A candle on a table, a hearth in a cottage, a star above the fields. Each one a sign that someone, somewhere, was still awake, still tending the fragile warmth of being alive. As you drift deeper into this picture, you might feel the edges of the present blur. The hum of modern life fades away. The lights, the machines, the noise of thought. What remains is the pulse of another age, steady and slow, like the rhythm of your own breath. The bell sounds again, softer now. Its echo settles over the rooftops, folding the town into sleep. It does not command or demand, it simply reminds that even in the smallest corners of time, there was order and care and meaning. We will wander there tonight, through streets that no longer exist, past walls that once held warmth and laughter, past rules that seem strange now, yet once gave comfort to those who followed them. There will be no haste. The story moves gently, like a river in twilight, carrying you with it quietly, without asking for thought or effort. All you need to do is listen. Let your mind grow soft around the edges. Let the sound of the bell fade until it becomes your own heartbeat. Each breath another step through the centuries. Somewhere beyond the silence, a door opens and the night stretches before you like a long, calm road. You are safe here, among echoes and whispers, among rules that no longer bind, among the ghosts of lives that once moved through shadow and light.
So rest your thoughts.
The world has slowed.
The past waits, still and patient.
And the bell, the old night bell, rings once more, a final note before dreams begin. Now let us walk together into the hush of the Middle Ages. Not to study or to judge, but simply to drift,
to listen,
and to sleep. The rule of clothing, threads of hierarchy. Imagine a narrow street in a medieval town. The air is cool and faintly damp, carrying the smell of smoke and wool and earth. Under a sky the colour of pewter, people move quietly between market stalls. You hear the sound of footsteps on stone, the soft hum of conversation, the clatter of a wooden wheel. Everywhere you look there are clothes, woven, stitched and mended by hand, wool cloaks heavy with dew, linen tunics pale and coarse, a few flashes of brighter colour where merchants pass, their purses weighted with coin. And there, at the edge of the crowd, a figure in velvet, the shimmer of dye catching the weak sunlight. In this world, cloth is not just cloth.
It is identity.
It is boundary. It is a language without words. Centuries ago, before the hum of machines and the glare of electric light, a person's life could be read from what they wore. The thread itself told the story. Who you were, what you owned, where you stood in the quiet hierarchy that held everything together. Silk was soft as breath, brought from far away, its journey written in sea salt and dust. Velvet glowed like evening light, smooth, deep, expensive to the point of reverence. These were fabrics of the noble, the chosen few, whose lives were measured not in labour but in lineage. Their sleeves trailed long and heavy. Their collars framed the neck like painted halos. Each fold and stitch carried weight, not comfort, but presence. For everyone else, the world was woven in simpler threads. Wool for warmth, linen for work. Homespun cloth dyed in muted browns and greens, the colours of soil and field, rough on the skin but strong enough to last through season after season. In a medieval village, to wear silk when you were meant for wool was to step out of line, not in rebellion but in presumption. The law said it was forbidden. There were lists long and careful, naming which fabrics, which colours, which ornaments each class might wear. These were called sumptuary laws, rules of appearance meant to protect order. To a modern ear, they sound severe. Yet they were born from something quiet, almost tender. The belief that society could be kept in balance if each person stayed within their pattern. When a noble passed through the market, his velvet cloak distinguished him, and the crowd bowed slightly, not in fear, but in recognition. He was what the cloth declared him to be. And when the farmers looked at one another, their woolen sleeves were alike, equal in weight and wear. The sameness brought comfort, a sense of belonging in a world where little else could be controlled. Clothing was also protection. It marked you as part of something, and in times of unrest, that was safety. To dress above your rank could bring suspicion, a guard's question, a priest's frown, a fine from the town's steward. Sometimes it brought worse. A merchant who dressed too well might be accused of arrogance. A craftsman's wife wearing bright colour might draw whispers. But more often it was quiet disapproval, a kind of social chill that pressed from all sides until you stepped back into place. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the whisper of fabric in that world. The soft drag of hem across stone, the gentle creak of leather belts, the rustle of sleeves as people bow in greeting. Even sound obeyed the pattern of class. Silk moved differently from wool. Velvet muffled footsteps. A noble could glide through a hall while a servant's coarse tunic crackled faintly with straw and dust. In small towns and manors, these differences defined the landscape as clearly as walls or roads. The blacksmith's apron stained with soot, the miller's cap powdered with flour, the shepherd's cloak heavy with lanolin and rain, each one a kind of map showing the invisible lines of labor that kept the world turning. It was not always harsh. For many, the rule of clothing gave rhythm to life. The spinning wheels sang through the afternoon. Hands wove and patched and dyed with quiet care.
Mothers taught daughters how to mend a hem. Fathers passed down the craft of tanning, weaving, shearing.
To make a garment was to make a small piece of stability in a shifting, uncertain world. In the larger cities, tailors' shops filled the narrow streets with color and sound. Bolts of cloth hung from beams. The smell of dye drifted from open windows. And everywhere, conversation about fabric, the price of wool from Flanders, the new color brought from Venice, the cut of a noble's sleeve in the royal court. Even the simplest tunic was part of a vast web of trade and craft, connecting villages to kingdoms and kingdoms to seas. At night, when the streets emptied, the clothes themselves seemed to rest. Garments folded neatly by candlelight, shoes placed beside beds of straw. The silence after a day's work had its own texture, like worn fabric softening with time. You can imagine the faint sound of thread sliding through cloth as someone finishes a last stitch before sleep. To live then was to feel the weight of what you wore, literally and quietly. Every fold carried the memory of hands that made it. Every patch told a story. Clothes were mended until they could mend no more. Nothing was wasted. A worn sleeve might become a child's cap, a torn cloak, a blanket. Even scraps of fabric were treasured, for each piece meant time, labor, and care. And yet, beyond practicality, there was beauty. Simple beauty in the weave of homespun linen, in the uneven dye of a village cloak, in the way sunlight caught the small threads of wool and made them glow. To those who lived inside these patterns, life felt ordered, not easy, not fair, but known. Occasionally, someone would dare to cross the line. A young craftsman, newly successful, buying a strip of bright fabric to sew at his collar. A farmer's daughter plaiting a ribbon into her hair, dyed with berries she picked herself. Small acts of vanity, perhaps, or hope, reminders that identity is never fully contained. But even those gestures were soon absorbed back into the rhythm of the town. The ribbon faded, the collar frayed,
and the world continued unchanged, steady in its slow procession of wool and linen and rule.
When you think of that world now, let it come gently, as if through a thin curtain of time. See the light grey streets, the soft clouds drifting above, the figures moving quietly through the morning mist, each of them dressed not for display but for survival, for belonging, for a fragile sense of peace. The rule of clothing was not cruelty alone. It was also memory, the memory of scarcity, of winters too long, of harvests that might fail.
When you control color and texture, you control desire.
When desire is quiet, hunger is quiet. And in that quiet there was safety. So they lived inside their threads, each person a small part of a woven order. Nobles gleaming in velvet, merchants wrapped in fine wool, farmers steady in linen.
The air between them filled with the faint, constant sound of cloth, brushing, folding, whispering.
Now, as you drift through this image, the town begins to fade. The streets blur into shadow, the colors soften. All that remains is the rustle of fabric, slow and rhythmic, like the sound of breathing. You might feel it, the quiet balance of a world long gone, where even the simplest garment carried meaning, and every thread, in its own way, held the fragile weight of peace. The curfew bell, silence after sunset. When the day had finished its slow turn and the light began to thin, a bell would ring. Its voice was low and patient, each note drifting outward like ripples on still water. The sound moved through alleys and courtyards, across gardens and roofs, until it touched the farthest edge of the town. This was the curfew bell. It did not hurry anyone, yet everyone understood. Hands paused at their work. The wheel stopped turning, the broom rested against the wall, the final bucket of water was drawn from the well. Fires were stirred once more and then covered. Lamps were shaded, candles pinched between damp fingers. All through the settlement, little points of light winked out one by one. The glow faded from windows, leaving only the pale reflection of the moon on glass. Doors were latched, voices softened. The town folded itself into darkness, careful and complete. The rule was simple. After the bell, no flame was to remain. It was not superstition, but necessity. Walls were made of wood and straw, beams dry from years of smoke. A single spark could leap across a roof and take a street before morning. So the law was a promise: sleep safely, and tomorrow the town will still stand. The bell continued its slow rhythm. From the tower it seemed almost kind, a reminder rather than a command. It marked not fear, but a boundary between day and night, between movement and rest. In the quiet that followed, the air itself seemed to settle. The scent of extinguished fire lingered, warm ash, faint resin, a trace of oil. The stones beneath the windows held the last heat of the sun. Cats moved silently along the walls. Somewhere, a shutter creaked, then closed. Beyond the town, fields slept under a thin mist. The river murmured in its bed. A dog barked once, half awake, then sank again into dreams. From the tower, the final tone drifted away, so slow it was almost thought rather than sound. Inside the houses, people lay close together. The rhythm of breathing replaced the rhythm of work. Children curled beneath woolen blankets. They whispered once or twice, their words fading into sleep. A small coal in the hearth gave a final sigh, collapsing into grey dust. The night stretched wide and calm. There were no lanterns in the streets now, no guards carrying torches. Only the stars provided their quiet watch. They seemed nearer then, brighter against the deep blue of unlit air. In such darkness, even starlight had weight. It rested softly on rooftops and water, outlining the shape of the world. For those who woke in the small hours, the silence was complete. They might hear the wind brush through the thatch or a mouse rustle in stored grain. Perhaps the distant call of an owl. These were gentle sounds, reminders that life continued, though unseen. Nothing hurried, nothing called for reply. The curfew bell had created a shared stillness. In every home, the same rule, the same pause. It joined people not through noise but through quiet, an invisible thread woven across the town. Each person kept their own peace, yet all belonged to the same hush. Some believed the silence held healing power. Sleep came easily when the mind could rest inside so much dark. Others said the silence was discipline, a habit that shaped the soul, but most simply accepted it as part of living, as ordinary as dawn and bread and rain. The hours after the bell were measured not by clocks but by sensation. The cooling of the floor, the softening of air, the fading of smoke from clothes. Time moved gently without edges. If you could walk those streets now, you would feel how smooth the stones had become under centuries of bare feet. You would hear almost nothing, only the faint echo of your own step, and somewhere far away, the steady flow of the river. The houses lean toward one another as if in quiet conversation. Their small windows glint like closed eyes. It was a rule that carried memory. People remembered fires, how quickly they spread, how helpless a town became when light turned against it. The curfew bell was the answer to that memory. To obey it was to keep danger outside the dream. Each tone reminded them that safety began with calm. Even those who grumbled still listened. A blacksmith might mutter that he could work longer, a baker that his dough was not ready. But when the bell reached its final stroke, they covered their coals and stepped into the night air. They felt the coolness on their faces, the relief of ending. In that small surrender, there was rest.
Sometimes a traveller arrived too late after the bell.
He would find the gate closed, the torches extinguished. From the road he could see no light at all, only the shape of towers against the sky. He might call once or twice, then wrap his cloak tighter and sleep by the wall until morning. No one thought this cruel. It was simply how the world protected itself. When dawn returned, the same bell would ring again, brisk and bright. The town would stir, fires relit, doors opened, voices rising, but that belonged to another rhythm. Now, the night remained whole. If you listen closely, you may hear the echo of that bell, very far away, somewhere beyond memory. It is steady, not loud. It carries no warning, only pattern. A note, a pause, another note, each one an invitation to rest. Imagine lying inside a wooden house with thick walls and a low ceiling. The light from the window is gone. Only the faint shimmer of stars touches the floor. Outside, the wind moves gently through the trees. The bell has finished its work, and silence, vast and kind, fills the space it leaves behind.
Your breathing joins the rhythm of that silence.
Slow, even unhurried. You feel the day folding in on itself, its corners smoothed by darkness.
There is nothing left to do, nothing to guard.
The town sleeps, and so do you. If peace could have a sound, it would be this: the memory of the bell fading into the night. Not gone, just distant, absorbed by time. And in that distance lies safety, the quiet certainty that the flames are out, the walls are standing, the stars are bright.
The Middle Ages were full of rules like this, made from fear, but ending in calm.
Each one a promise, small and human, to keep the world from breaking apart. The curfew bell was among the gentlest of them, a sound that closed the day with care. Now the air cools further, and the last wisp of smoke disappears into the dark. Somewhere, an ember glows faintly, then sleeps. The town has vanished into stillness. The bell, too, is silent. And if you wait a little longer, you may notice that silence has its own music. A rhythm older than the bell itself, steady as the heart, soft as the breath that carries you toward rest. The night is complete. The law is fulfilled, the stars remain awake, and the world, wrapped in its quiet rule, turns gently beneath them. The law of the forest, a lord's domain. Beyond the edge of the town, past the last cottage and the final field of barley, the land changes, stone paths give way to soil, fences grow sparse, and then, almost suddenly, there is forest. Vast, cool, and slow-breathing. The trees stand close together, their trunks dark with age. Branches knit overhead, weaving a quiet roof that softens the light. The air here smells of earth and moss and fallen leaves, rich and deep. It is the scent of time itself, old, patient, and endlessly returning. For those who lived in the Middle Ages, this forest was everything. It was warmth in winter, food in hunger, shelter in rain. It held berries and roots, mushrooms and herbs, wood for building, bark for medicine, animals for meat and fur. To enter it was to step into the world's storehouse, the ancient pantry of survival. And yet, the forest was not theirs. By law and by custom, every tree, every creature, every path through the undergrowth belonged to someone else. The lord of the manor, the baron, the noble who owned the land. His claim extended beyond the fields and into the wild. He might never walk its farthest corners, might never see the glades where deer slept, but his name was written there in silence. The forest was his domain. To cut a branch or snare a rabbit without permission was to take from him, and that was crime. The rule had grown over centuries, slow as ivy. It began as protection, the keeping of royal hunting grounds, the guarding of rare animals that symbolized power. But over time it hardened into law. Certain animals were called beasts of the chase, the stag, the boar, the hare. They were marked as noble creatures sacred to kings. Common people could look at them but not touch. The penalty for poaching was severe. Sometimes it meant a fine, though few could pay. Sometimes it meant the loss of a hand or an ear. Sometimes it meant death, and still the forest called. When harvests failed or winters stretched too long, people listened to that call. At night, when the bell had rung and the town had gone still, a few slipped quietly through the fields. They moved along narrow tracks known only to those who worked the land. Their boots were wrapped in cloth to soften the sound. They carried small nets, simple bows, or just a knife, sharpened again and again until the edge shone like moonlight. Under the trees, the air was different.
Cooler, heavier, alive with small movements. The rustle of leaves, the flutter of wings, the crack of a twig.
They stepped carefully, pausing often to listen. Every sound might mean discovery or escape or nothing at all. The forest was dangerous, but it was also home. They knew where the hazelnuts grew thick, where the rabbits burrowed near the roots, where the stream cut through the slope and left tracks of deer along its banks. These were memories passed from one generation to the next, a quiet inheritance whispered rather than written. To walk there was not only need, but remembrance, a return to something older than law. Once, before lords and borders, the forest had belonged to everyone. It had been shared by those who lived beside it, tended and taken from with care. Now that memory survived only in stories told beside the fire. Of times when people could gather wood without fear, when no one owned the wind that moved through the trees. The forest at night was vast but intimate. The moon found its way through gaps in the leaves, laying silver shapes across the ground. Mist clung low, hiding the roots and stones. Sometimes an owl called, and the sound folded back upon itself until it seemed part of the air. The people who entered that world moved slowly, almost invisible. Their hearts beat quietly. They thought of their children sleeping at home, of the empty pot on the hearth, of the cold that waited for morning. They did not come for greed, only for survival. A rabbit, a handful of berries, a fallen branch for burning. Small things that meant warmth, that meant life. If they were caught, the forest would change again. The silence would split with voices, with dogs, with torches, cutting through the dark. The Lord's men moved quickly when they wished to make an example. And yet, even they felt the stillness pressing around them, the soft resistance of nature that swallowed their footsteps. Punishment was public. A man accused of poaching might be brought to the square, the snare or knife displayed as proof. Sometimes he confessed, sometimes not. It made little difference. The law of the forest did not depend on words, only on ownership. To take from it was to forget one's place. The people learned to look down, to nod, to accept the shape of the world as it was drawn for them. And still they returned. Perhaps that was the quiet truth of those times, that the forest and the people belonged to each other more deeply than law could measure. A rule may say who owns the deer, but it cannot claim the hunger that drives the hand, nor the knowledge of paths and seasons that lives inside the body like breath.
So the rhythm continued.
The Lord hunted by day, surrounded by horses and horns. The villagers entered by night, silent and barefoot. Each believed the forest answered to them. Perhaps in its endless patience, it answered to no one. During daylight, the woods seemed almost empty. Sunlight broke through in bright shafts, turning the dust of pollen into drifting gold.
Birds called from unseen branches.
The wind carried the scent of pine resin and damp bark. To walk there in safety, with permission, was to feel a strange kind of calm. The sound of the town was gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of the natural world. For those forbidden to enter, that calm was something remembered rather than known. They saw the trees only from afar, a dark line beyond the fields, like the edge of another life. Children asked what lay inside, and parents answered softly, "Everything we need, and everything we cannot touch." The rule of the forest was not only power, but symbol. The animals that lived there were wealth made visible. Living treasures that moved through the Lord's land and proclaimed his right to rule. A stag's antlers hung in the hall, polished to pale bone. Fur lined the cloaks of nobility. Even songs praised the hunt, its grace, its danger, its triumph. But to those outside the castle walls, the same animals were hunger walking on 4 legs. The stag that was glory to the Lord was a week's food to the farmer. A single rabbit might mean a child's full belly. And so the meaning of the forest divided just as its ownership had. In winter, when snow covered the fields and firewood grew scarce, the need sharpened. Men and women ventured deeper, seeking fallen branches, listening for the faintest movement. The snow muffled sound but showed every print. They learned to step in the tracks of animals, to mask their trail, to vanish before dawn. Sometimes they succeeded, Sometimes they did not return. The forest kept its secrets, indifferent to loss. Yet in those quiet nights, something passed between the people and the woods, a kind of understanding that had nothing to do with law. The forest gave, and they took gently, gratefully, never more than they must. It was an old conversation, older than titles or ownership. If you listen now, in the deep hours of night, you might still hear it. The crack of a branch under careful weight, the slow breath of wind through pine, the faint rhythm of footsteps moving deeper into shadow. The moon hangs low above the treetops. Its light gathers in pools on the forest floor, soft and white. Between the trunks, shapes move, neither ghost nor story, but memory. They carry the same quiet purpose, the same fragile hope that guided their ancestors centuries ago. For all its rules, the medieval world was held together by such fragile hopes. The law of the forest was one of many boundaries that kept order, but it also revealed the thinness of that order, how easily it bent to hunger, how often it was broken by need. To the lord, the forest was property. To the villager, it was life. Between them lay the silence of trees, listening, unchanging, patient. Over the years, some of those forests vanished. Fields expanded, villages grew. The old laws faded from parchment and memory, but in the quiet corners that remain.
In the rustle of leaves, in the soft scent of moss after rain,
the story still lingers. It is the story of boundaries, drawn and crossed, of a world where every gift of nature carried a name, and of people who, in the dark, found ways to survive between the lines. The forest itself cared for none of this. It simply continued, growing, shedding, renewing. The same trees that watched the hunts of kings also sheltered the footsteps of the poor. They did not choose sides, they only lived and breathed and waited. Now, centuries later, when we think of that world, it feels distant yet familiar. The contrast between rule and need, between what is claimed and what is shared. In that distance lies a quiet truth that the forest, vast and enduring, belongs only to itself. If you stand beneath its canopy, the air grows cooler. Light moves slowly through the leaves. You might hear the same sounds they heard long ago. The creak of branches, the sigh of wind,
perhaps the far-off rhythm of hooves or the hush of feet among ferns.
You may feel the same thought they felt, that the world is wide and you are small, but here, in the stillness between trees, smallness is not a burden, it is peace. And so the story of the forest ends as it began, with a line drawn between power and need, with silence as witness, and with the moon watching from above, its light falling gently on paths that lead nowhere and everywhere at once. The trees breathe slowly. The night deepens. Somewhere, unseen, a branch breaks under quiet feet. The sound is small, but it carries far. Then it fades, leaving only the whisper of leaves. Steady, endless, unjudging. The forest keeping its calm dominion, its law older than kings, its peace older than fear. The hidden order of work. When morning returned to the medieval town, it arrived without hurry. The first sound was not the bell or the market cry, but the murmur of hands beginning their work. Somewhere, a door opened, smoke rose from a chimney. The scent of bread, still unbaked, mingled with the damp air. Every street held its own rhythm. Bakers moved through their shops, shaping dough by touch rather than sight. Blacksmiths woke the forges, coaxing orange sparks from the cold ash. Weavers stretched the threads upon their looms.
Masons lifted their chisels, steady as breath. Each trade was a world, complete in itself, yet bound to others by unseen threads.
This binding was called the guild. The guild was not a building, though some had halls with creaking floors and carved beams. It was a circle of belonging, part family, part law, part quiet promise. To enter, one had to prove skill, patience, and obedience. Within, one found order. Outside, one found uncertainty. No craft in that age stood alone. The baker's bread fed the mason's walls sheltered the smith. The smith's tools shaped the loom that wove the cloth that dressed the baker's child. To keep the pattern steady, rules were drawn. Who could make what, how much it might cost when it could be sold, all decided by the guild. These rules were more than protection, they were rhythm. A weaver did not rush the shuttle across the frame, for speed without care was shame. A blacksmith tempered each blade to the same quiet standard his father had taught him. A baker learned the weight of dough by the feel of his palms, and passed that knowledge to an apprentice who would someday pass it again. Inside the guild, a man or woman became more than a name. They became part of a lineage of craft, a living thread in the cloth of the town. Their identity rested not in words, but in work well done.
A wall that stood straight, a cup that held water without leak, a loaf that rose evenly at dawn.
Apprentices began at the edge of this circle.
They were young, often sent by families who could spare little.
They swept floors, fetched water, tended fires. Their first lessons were patience and silence. To watch, to listen, to repeat, until the hands remembered what the mind did not yet understand. Years passed. Apprentices became journeymen, free to travel, carrying a small bundle of tools and a letter of skill. They wandered from town to town, offering their labor where it was needed, learning new ways from each master they served. In that wandering, the crafts of Europe grew, slowly, quietly, as ideas crossed rivers and languages. When the journeyman returned and was judged ready, he presented a masterpiece. It was not art as we imagine it now, but proof. A chair perfectly made, a blade that cut true, a loaf that baked evenly from edge to center. If the guild approved, he became a master himself, with his own bench, his own mark, his own apprentices. The circle widened, but the pattern stayed the same. Within those patterns lay comfort. A baker knew his place and his worth. A smith could walk through the market and recognize his own iron in the carts that passed. Work was more than labor, it was connection between teacher and student, between the living and the dead, between the present and what had always been. The guild protected this connection. It set prices not for greed, but for balance. Too cheap and the craft was dishonored, too costly, and neighbors would starve. Fairness was measured not in profit, but in proportion. Each craft understood itself as one thread in a larger fabric that held the town together. Still, it was not freedom. The same rules that sheltered could also confine. To work without the guild's mark was to work in shadow. A potter who sold without permission might wake to find his stall empty, his tools confiscated. The law of the guild was soft in sound, but firm in hand.
Order required obedience.
Even beauty bowed to the ledger. And yet inside those walls of rule, there was dignity. A man who once had nothing but his hands, could shape a future through skill. A woman who learned to weave could clothe her family and trade her cloth for bread. Each found purpose in the repetition, in the steady rhythm of making. If you walk in imagination through one of those narrow streets, you might hear it. The tap of hammer on anvil, regular as heartbeat, the sigh of bellows breathing fire to life, the soft shuffle of flour on wooden boards, the long hum of thread drawn tight between pins. The air is filled with dust. Iron, grain, wool, stone. The dust of creation. Light enters through small windows and falls across benches cluttered with tools. Hands move with memory, shaping, smoothing, lifting, placing. No one hurries. Time itself seems to move at the pace of work. Evening comes and still they labor. The bell rings faintly in the distance, but the craftsman works a little longer. He wipes the blade clean, folds the cloth, marks the bread. When the task is finished, he sits back in the fading light and listens. The sounds of other workshops drift through the open window. A rhythm of labor that fills the night with quiet harmony.
For those who belonged to the guild, this order was the shape of life.
Birth, learning, mastery, teaching, and rest. Each followed the same path, as predictable as the seasons. Within that repetition, the human spirit found calm. To make something useful and lasting was to leave a trace of oneself in the world, a small permanence in a time when most things passed quickly away. The guild also carried memory across generations. Its records were written in ledgers, its stories told around fires, its oaths spoken aloud in candlelight. When a craftsman died, his tools were kept by the guild until another hand was worthy to hold them. Skill did not vanish, it was inherited, not by blood, but by practice. In that way, a kind of immortality was built, not through glory, but through continuity. Beyond the town walls, the world might shift. Wars, famines, kings and borders. But inside the workshops, the same quiet labor continued. Steel met fire, flour met water, thread met loom. Each repetition was both old and new. The work changed little, but within its smallness lay stability. There was beauty too, though seldom spoken, not in grand cathedrals or jeweled crowns, but in the curve of a wooden spoon, the balance of a well-forged nail, the smooth edge of a millstone. These were the silent achievements of the hidden order. Things made not for praise, but for use, and yet touched by care that outlasted centuries. Sometimes travelers would pause at the edge of town and listen. They would hear that low hum of creation, not music, yet rhythmic, not prayer, yet reverent. The sound of people shaping the world with patience. In those sounds lived the soul of the Middle Ages. Steady, communal, unhurried. Each trade held its mysteries, each hand its purpose. The guild was both cage and comfort,
but it kept the heartbeat of the town alive.
Night fell at last. The fires dimmed, tools were set aside and benches wiped clean. The air cooled. The smell of iron and bread and wool mingled with the soft scent of rain. In that final stillness, one might sense the deeper pattern. A life built from small repetitions, from rules that guided rather than ruled, from the quiet discipline of hands that knew what they were born to do. And so as the stars rose above the roofs, the town rested again, wrapped in the faint echo of its own labor. A world built from work and held together by those who made. Even in the dark, the rhythm continued. A wheel still turning, a forge still warm, a thought of tomorrow's bread already rising in the quiet mind of the baker. The Middle Ages may seem distant, but in their patient work lies something familiar. The longing for order, for meaning in repetition, for connection through creation. The guilds are gone, their halls crumbled, their records faded, but the hidden order remains. In every hand that builds, in every heart that finds calm in craft, in every quiet rhythm that turns work into peace. And somewhere, in the soft space between waking and rest, you can almost hear it, the hum of the old workshops, the steady breath of the hidden order of work. The bells and the hours. Before the world learned to divide its days by ticking hands and moving gears, it listened. Time was not seen. It was heard. Across the fields and rooftops of a medieval town, the bell was the heartbeat of the day. It rang from a high tower, slow and deliberate, its sound unfolding through the air like ripples on still water. Each toll travelled far, through open doors, across gardens, through mist, until even the shepherds in the far meadows could hear it. There were no clocks to watch, no numbers to chase. The bell was enough. Its tone marked every passage of life. The beginning of labour, the hour of prayer, the moment for rest. At dawn, the first bell rose with the light. Its sound was cool and silver, echoing through the pale sky. People stirred in their beds, the rhythm of sleep giving way to the rhythm of day. Fires were rekindled, bread was kneaded, water drawn. The town breathed awake, following the pulse of sound. The morning belonged to work. In workshops and fields, people moved to steady rhythm, hammer and anvil, wheel and spindle, shovel and soil. But beneath it all, the bell remained the unseen conductor. When it called again, tools were set down. Hands brushed the dust from sleeves, faces turned, not in complaint, but in quiet acknowledgement. The bell had spoken. It was time to pause, to breathe, to pray. Prayer was not only worship, it was also rest. To stop in the middle of a task, to fold the hands, to let the mind empty for a moment, that was peace enough. The bell carried that peace through every street, reminding each person that time itself was sacred. In the afternoon, its tone grew warmer, fuller, like sunlight deepening over stone. Children played near doorways. Merchants called softly in the market. Even in noise, the rhythm of the bell held. It was not something people noticed. It was something they lived within, as natural as breath. To live by bells was to live by pattern. There was comfort in knowing that the day would unfold as it always had, a beginning, a middle, an ending, each one gently marked by sound. It meant that no matter how small a person was, they belonged to something larger, a shared measure of existence, where no one was ever truly alone in time. Evening came quietly. The light softened, slipping between the roofs. The final bells of the day sounded low and deep, like voices speaking from the earth. They told the town to rest, to draw in its fires, to close its shutters. The same bell that had woken the baker at dawn now lulled him to stillness. Its echo lingered as the stars appeared. The bell's voice was the oldest law, one that asked for nothing but attention. It told no one what to believe, only when to begin and when to end. And in that simplicity lay harmony. The sound gathered everyone, rich or poor, priest or farmer, into the same invisible circle of hours. Before mechanical time, people did not live by minutes. They lived by moments, the space between one bell and the next. The rhythm of life was wide, breathing, flexible. If the rain came late, the bell waited. If the harvest ran long, the bell forgave. Time was not an enemy then, it was a companion that moved at the same pace as the world. Some said the air itself held memory of those bells. How the tone would drift through fog and blend with the wind, how it would pass over the fields like a slow wave of reassurance. Each ring was a promise that the day was still unfolding, that the pattern still held. At night, the bells rested. Silence returned to the town, but not emptiness. The silence was simply the other half of the rhythm, the pause that made the next sound meaningful.
Even in sleep, people felt that pulse, as if the heart of the world continued to beat softly beneath their dreams.
To us, the life shaped by bells may seem confined, but to them it was safety. In a world of uncertainty, weather, famine, illness,
the regular chime was the one thing that did not fail.
it could not be stolen or burned or silenced for long. No matter what happened, the bell would ring again. For the townsfolk, that faith in rhythm was enough. The tolling became the measure of trust. Each sound said, "You are still here." The world still turns. The pattern endures. If you close your eyes, you might hear it still. A distant tone, clear and slow, one strike, then another. Each one separated by silence, yet joined in continuity. The same kind of stillness that lives between breaths. Imagine the bell tower standing in the dusk. Its stones are cool, its edges softened by centuries of wind. Inside, a rope waits, thick and worn from countless hands. When it moves, the great bronze bell swings once, and the sound flows outward, expanding gently through the air. The town listens. The river listens. Even the hills, in their quiet way, seem to listen. No one speaks, there is no need. The sound itself is enough, a voice older than memory, a voice that once told the world when to rise, when to work, when to dream. The bell does not command, it reminds. Each toll is a breath, each silence a pause for the heart, measured, ancient, eternal. Now, centuries later, we mark our time by other means. Numbers glowing on screens, hands circling dials, alarms dividing the day. The rhythm is faster, sharper, less forgiving. But sometimes, if you listen closely, you can still sense the echo of that older order, a deeper pulse beneath the noise of modern hours. It is the same rhythm that once shaped the towns, the rhythm of sun and labor and rest, the rhythm that says, "This is enough, this moment, this breath." The bells have long since fallen silent, their towers crumbled, their ropes turned to dust. But the idea remains
That time is not something to be conquered,
but something to share, a gentle measure, a patient companion, a soft reminder that life moves in circles, not lines. So let the sound return in imagination. Let it travel slowly through the air,
touching each corner of the town,
each window, each hand paused in work. You can almost feel it. The vibration in the chest, the hush that follows, the warmth of belonging that lingers when the echo fades. Time in that world was not a chain but a rhythm, the rhythm of bells and hours,
of sound and silence,
of life held in balance between the two. And as the last tone drifts away into the distance, you sense what they must have felt, that time is not passing but unfolding gently, around you. Measured, ancient, eternal. The ban on bathhouses, cleanliness and fear. There was a time when water meant joy, when the sound of laughter echoed softly through tiled rooms and steam rose like ghosts of warmth against painted walls. The medieval bathhouse was a place of gathering, of chatter, of comfort, of release from the long labor of the day. Inside, candles burned low, the air shimmered with heat. People shared stories, sang softly, exchanged news of births and trades. Friends met in the same warm pools where their parents had once met. There was no shame in this closeness, no hesitation. Cleanliness was not just the washing of skin, but a kind of shared renewal, the feeling of leaving the world's dust behind. Then slowly something changed. Whispers began, small, uncertain, like drafts in a closed room. Illnesses appeared that no one understood. Bodies grew weak, fevers rose, and healers could not explain why. People looked for patterns, for reasons, for safety. And in the soft echo of fear, the bathhouse became suspect. It was said that disease passed through steam, that warm water opened the body to unseen dangers. What had once been a place of healing began to seem like a trap. One person's comfort, they feared, might become another's death. So the laughter faded. Doors closed, water cooled in the basins. Moss began to gather where soap had once dissolved. To us, it may sound strange, the idea that washing could be dangerous, but in that age, fear had its own logic. When the world offered little understanding, belief became the shape of reason. The bathhouse stood at the heart of town life.
To lose it was to lose more than cleanliness. It was to lose connection.
Conversations that once rose over the sound of pouring water now faded into silence. Neighbors met less often. The easy warmth of shared humanity cooled like the water that no longer moved in the pools. Instead, people turned to ritual, to caution, to prayer. They washed at home, alone in small bowls of cold water. They spoke of purity not as comfort, but as vigilance. To stay clean, one must not risk being clean too much. The irony was quiet, almost invisible. In their search for safety, life became rougher. The scent of sweat replaced the scent of soap. The body grew heavier beneath layers of cloth meant to protect it. The warmth of the bathhouse, its laughter, its community, was replaced by the chill of isolation. Yet no one blamed the rule. The law was seen as mercy, as caution in uncertain times. Better to live with discomfort than to die in ignorance, they told themselves. And so the stone doors remained shut. The water-weighted rain fell on roofs, on wells, on the same rivers that once fed the baths, but no one came to gather it. Nature continued her rhythm, only people had paused. Fear is a quiet teacher. It moves not in shouts, but in whispers. The soft warnings passed between friends, the quick glances of suspicion, the certainty that safety lies in withdrawal. And in that withdrawal, something subtle shifted. Cleanliness ceased to be physical, it became moral. To stay pure was not to wash, but to abstain.
To prove one's restraint, one's piety,
one's distance from temptation and from risk. The bathhouse had once held more than water. It held trust, the trust of sitting beside another person, sharing warmth without judgment. When that trust dissolved, the water was not the only thing that turned cold. Still, in quiet corners, some remembered. They spoke of the old days, of evenings when the light from the bathhouse windows
fell like gold across the street,
and the scent of herbs rose with the steam. They remembered the hum of voices, the soft clatter of buckets, the sound of peace in the midst of labor.
But memory, like steam, fades.
A generation passed, then another. Children grew who had never known the baths at all. To them, the empty buildings were relics. Strange shells of another age, their tiled floors cracked, their basins dry. The belief that water carried danger settled deep. Even the act of washing became private, careful, half-hearted. Cleanliness was no longer shared. It was something done in silence, with cold water, with caution, under the quiet eye of superstition. In time, the old bathhouses were repurposed. Some became storerooms, some chapels, some fell into ruin. The laughter that once filled them seemed to linger in the stone, like a memory too faint to name.
When the wind passed through broken windows,
It almost sounded like that lost joy returning for a moment. A faint echo of what was once ordinary and human. And perhaps the wind remembers. It moves now as it did then, through courtyards and streets, through walls that once held warmth. It carries both scent and sound, the distant trace of water, the whisper of vanished conversation. We might wonder now how fear can reshape life so completely, how something as simple as water can shift, from blessing to danger, from communion to isolation. But for those who lived it, fear was not madness, it was survival. The world they knew was fragile, its boundaries uncertain. When illness came, it took without reason,
and no wisdom could stop it.
So people learned to withdraw, to protect what they could, their bodies, their souls, their small, controlled spaces of safety. There was a strange comfort in the rules, even harsh ones. A sense that by obeying, one might hold back the tide of chaos. To stay unwashed was to stay alive. And life, even shadowed by fear, was worth preserving. Yet beneath that obedience, the body still remembered what it had lost. The feel of warm water on skin, the ease of laughter echoing off stone, the simple pleasure of being clean and known and unafraid. Those memories lived quietly, passing from story to story, until centuries later, the world would rediscover the warmth of water. But in those long, cold years, the silence of the bathhouse marked a shift in the human heart. A turning away from touch, from community, from the shared rituals that once bound life together. It is easy now to smile at such superstition, to think of it as foolishness, yet in their fear they were only human. They sought the same thing we seek: safety, meaning, control over the unknown. Their laws were not cruelty. They were comfort. Their silence, not emptiness, but defense. So the doors stayed closed and the water remained still, and the world waited, patient, for courage to return. Outside, the wind hummed softly, moving through streets where bathhouses once stood. It brushed against stone and memory, carrying a hint of what had been. The laughter, the warmth, the simple sound of living. And if you listen carefully, you might hear that hum still, the wind remembering for us what it felt like to be unafraid of water, of one another, and of life itself. Rules of the table. What you could eat. The day's work ended, and evening came with the slow scent of bread. In every home, small or grand, mealtime was both comfort and command. Even at the table, the rules continued. Quiet, familiar, and unbroken. In the homes of nobles, bread was white and soft, made from finely sifted wheat. It glowed pale in the candlelight, its surface smooth as linen. Beside it lay meat from the hunt: swan, pheasant, venison. Flavors rich enough to fill the hall with their scent. Wine caught the flicker of flame, and silver spoons stirred gently. Far below, in cottages and kitchens, the meal was simpler. Brown bread, rough and dark, baked from rye or barley. A bowl of porridge, a few roots from the field, perhaps a thin broth made from what could be spared. No feast, but nourishment, enough to quiet the hunger and warm the body for the night. Every class had its food, and each dish carried meaning. To eat above one's station was not just a question of wealth, but of place, a reminder of how the world was divided. A farmer tasting noble fare risked more than envy, he risked the balance of the order itself. Such rules might seem cruel now, yet they were born of need. In a land often threatened by famine, food was not only sustenance, it was structure. The rich consumed the rare, the poor preserved the common, and in this way the fragile harvest was stretched to survive. Law became another kind of rationing, a quiet attempt at balance. Meals were small acts of faith. Each one said, "The world endures for another day." The bread, no matter its color, meant survival. Even coarse grain dipped in a little salt carried gratitude. At the long tables of the manor, servants stood in silence, their hands folded, their eyes lowered. They were close enough to smell the roasted meat, but would taste only what remained at the end. Still they worked with care, for feeding others was its own form of honor, a ritual that tied the great and the humble in one continuous motion. In the villages, families gathered around small wooden boards. No silver, no fine cloth, only the glow of the hearth and the sound of spoons against clay bowls. There was no luxury, but there was peace. Food was shared, and laughter was quiet, but genuine. The same wind that cooled the noble's wine also passed through the peasant's doorway, carrying the scent of bread, that one smell belonging to every class alike. For in the end, hunger was the one thing all could understand. Rules at the table were never only about food. They were about belonging, about knowing where one fit, in the great invisible pattern that held the world together. A man ate what he was meant to eat, not always because he agreed, but because it gave him a place in the order of things. And beneath that order there was a quiet logic. The earth gave just enough. The people took just enough. Too much from one and another would starve, so the table became another mirror of society. Carefully measured, delicately balanced, governed not by appetite, but by necessity. Now, when we think of those times, it is easy to imagine the harshness. The thin soups, the endless rules, the cold winters, but perhaps there was also calm in it. A rhythm to living that matched the rhythm of the land. The bread, baked each day, was not only food but reassurance that the sun had risen, that the fields had yielded, that life, however modest, continued. The scent of bread fills your imagination now. Warm, simple, safe. You breathe in and for a moment the centuries fall away. There is no hunger here, no rank or rule, only the quiet satisfaction of enough.
The world turns softly outside, and somewhere, unseen,
A loaf cools on a wooden table, still breathing the heat of the oven. Quarantine and isolation. The door, with a red cross. When illness came, it did not announce itself. There was no sound, no warning, only a change in the air. A cough behind a door, a fever that would not fade. Then one morning, a red cross appeared on the wood. The mark was simple. A brush stroke of paint, thick and rough. But it carried the weight of silence. It meant the house was no longer part of the world. It meant that those inside would wait and those outside would keep their distance. No one entered, no one left. Neighbors passed quietly, eyes lowered. Some paused long enough to leave a loaf of bread, a jug of water, a small bundle of herbs. Then they moved on quickly before the air could touch them. The door with the red cross became a border dash. Not of stone or iron, but of fear and compassion mixed together. It separated the living from the uncertain, but it also bound them in a strange, wordless care. Inside, families stayed close. The rooms grew still except for the sound of breathing. Sometimes there were prayers, sometimes stories whispered for comfort, sometimes only the hush of waiting. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of smoke and the faint sweetness of herbs meant to cleanse it. Windows stayed closed, candles burned low. The outside world faded to a memory. Days passed without count. The bell of the town still rang, but its sound seemed far away, belonging to another rhythm, another life. Some survived, some did not.
But all of them waited with a kind of courage born not from hope,
but from necessity, the calm acceptance of what could not be changed. It was a cruel rule, and yet in its cruelty there was care. The mark on the door protected others even as it condemned those within. To stay inside was an act of sacrifice, a quiet offering to the safety of the town. People feared the illness, but they also respected the line drawn by that red sign. They did not break it because they understood that fear, too, could serve as kindness. Sometimes, at dusk, when the streets were empty, a soft knock would sound at the quarantine door. Someone outside, a friend, a relative, would leave food and whisper a few words through the wood.
They could not see one another,
But for a moment, connection still existed. Even in isolation, there was love. It simply changed its shape, becoming distance, becoming patience, becoming the quiet endurance of not touching, not entering, not forgetting. The red cross stayed until the danger had passed. When it was gone, the door would open again slowly, like a wound healing. Light returned to the rooms. Voices rose once more. The air moved freely again. Those who survived carried the memory of silence with them. They spoke softly afterward, as if sound itself had grown sacred. They looked at neighbors with a kind of wonder, grateful simply to see another face, to share the same air, to live among the living. To us, the image of the red-marked door feels distant, but its meaning endures. It is a symbol of separation and of care,
of fear turned into protection,
of suffering carried quietly for the sake of others. The medieval world knew little of medicine,
but it understood the language of sacrifice.
when knowledge failed, compassion took its place, not loud or dramatic, but small, patient, and human. Sometimes, to protect what we love, we must close the door and wait. Sometimes care is nothing more than distance, held with tenderness. Outside, the wind hums softly through narrow streets. It brushes the old wood of those forgotten doors, carrying the memory of what once was, the stillness, the courage, the quiet proof that even fear can be gentle. the night without fire. The bell rang once more, slow, deep, and final. Its sound drifted through the air, crossing the rooftops, sliding along the fields until it met the edge of the forest and faded. The curfew had come again. One by one, lights went out, doors closed, fires were covered. The glow that had filled each cottage thinned and disappeared, leaving the village in gentle darkness. Without flame, the night returned to its ancient shape. The stars emerged first, countless and patient, their light soft enough to see, but never enough to chase the shadows away. Above, the sky opened wide, vast, silent, and endlessly calm. Inside each home, people settled into quiet. The air cooled, the smell of smoke lingered faintly in the rafters. Children murmured their last words, then fell into the deep, slow rhythm of sleep.
The day's warmth faded from the walls, and the world exhaled.
This was the hour of stillness, the time when all that moved did so softly. A mouse in the grain bin, a dog stirring beside the hearth, the whisper of wind against thatch. Beyond the edge of the village, the forest breathed too. Wolves howled in the distance, a sound both wild and familiar. It echoed not as threat, but as reminder. Life continued beyond the boundary of light. The people listened for a moment, then turned inward, comforted by the walls around them, by the nearness of family, by the rule that made night feel safe. To live without fire was to live with awareness. Every spark was precious. Every ember guarded.
A forgotten flame could undo the world.
So the law of darkness was a promise. That tomorrow would come unburned, that homes would still stand at dawn. The first nights must have been uneasy, but in time, silence became a kind of peace. People learned to sleep early, to dream long, to let darkness become part of life, instead of something to resist. The body adjusted, the mind softened, and fear transformed into rhythm. Each family found comfort in ritual. The folding of blankets, the quiet prayer, the sound of the latch falling into place. Night was not an enemy, but a companion that arrived on time, asking only stillness in return. The absence of fire deepened the senses. In the dark, one could hear more clearly. The steady breathing of loved ones, the faint creak of wood as it cooled, the rustle of wind moving across the fields. Even the smallest sounds seemed important, woven into the great fabric of the night. Without the distraction of light, thoughts became softer too. Memories wandered like shadows, slow and shapeless. Dreams began before sleep fully arrived and often continued into waking, blurring the line between the two. It was a different way of living, not hurried, not divided. The world belonged equally to day and to night, and both were necessary. Day for labor, night for rest, fire for warmth, darkness for renewal. There was wisdom in this balance. The rules that kept people safe also taught them to pause, to accept the limits of what could be done, to trust the quiet order of things. Sometimes the moon rose bright enough.
To paint the village in silver.
The rooftops gleamed faintly. The path to the well shimmered as if dusted with frost. Those who woke in the night might look out and see. The familiar world made strange, beautiful in its simplicity. No noise, no flame. Only shapes and shadows, and above them, the infinite sky. It was in such hours that people felt the weight of time most gently. Days passed like waves marked by bells and seasons, but nights like these belonged to eternity. In the stillness, life felt fragile and complete all at once. A single breath among countless others, each one part of the same rhythm. For all its fear and restraint, the curfew carried its own kind of grace. It gave shape to the dark, turned danger into safety and chaos into quiet. It taught that peace could be made not by doing more, but by stopping, by letting the world rest exactly as it was. You can almost feel it now. The chill of the air after the fires have gone out, the softness of the bed, the distant call of a wolf carried by wind. There is no hurry, no sound but breathing, only stillness and the faint comfort of knowing that tomorrow will come. The stars shimmer ancient and patient as ever. Somewhere a bell rings once more, so faint it might be a memory. The village sleeps, the darkness holds, and the night without fire glows quietly in its own way. Closing reflections: why the rules mattered. The night has deepened. The bells that once marked the hours have grown silent. The fires that once glowed behind shutters have long since faded into ash. What remains now is stillness, a silence so complete that it feels older than memory itself. And in that silence, the past breathes quietly. The Middle Ages, with all its rules and rituals and its fears and faiths, lingers not as noise, but as echo, a soft pulse beneath the surface of history. Every rule, however strange, was once a thread in the fragile fabric of survival. Each law, each custom, each small habit of the medieval world was born not from cruelty,
but from the quiet wish to continue.
To keep the fire from spreading, to keep hunger from winning, to keep the night from taking more than it must. To us, their world seems narrow, bounded by walls of superstition and control.
But to them, those walls were safety.
Within their limits, life had meaning. Beyond them, there was only chaos. Famine, war, the unknown. They lived by rhythm, by sound, by rule, by repetition.
The bell told them when to wake and when to sleep.
The curfew told them when to cover their flames. The guild told them how to work, and the church told them when to pray. Every act, every gesture had its place. It may seem confining now, but it gave their days a kind of music, a structure that made sense of uncertainty. Rules were the framework for peace. They did not erase fear, but they shaped it into something bearable. Fear without order is panic. Fear with order becomes caution. And in that caution they found a way to endure. The people of that age were not ignorant. They were observant.
They watched the sky, the growth of crops, the pattern of illness and health.
They saw how quickly fortune could turn, and so they built boundaries, not to restrain the soul, but to protect the body, to give shape to a life that might otherwise be swept away. Their laws of food, their rules of silence, their curfews and marks all spoke the same quiet language. Be careful, be humble, be alive tomorrow. In their fear of fire, they found safety. In their strictness of class, they found identity. In their silence, they found peace. Each rule, however strange, was an answer to something real. It may not have been perfect, but it was theirs. Their understanding of balance in a world that often gave none. The law of clothing reminded them who they were.
Not to shame, but to belong.
It kept life in pattern, a tapestry of differences that together made a whole. The law of the forest taught respect
for land, for ownership, for the boundary between taking and destroying.
The bell, the curfew, the silence. Each one carried the same heartbeat. That peace, even fragile, was worth the effort. The bathhouses, once full of laughter, grew quiet not from hate, but from caution. The door with the red cross was painted not to condemn, but to protect. Even in distance there was care. Even in fear there was compassion. They may not have had our medicine or science, but they had understanding, a slow, human understanding that survival depended on restraint. To modern eyes, their rules seem like chains, but if we look closer, we see threads, dash, dash.
Threads that held together families, villages, kingdoms.
Threads spun from necessity, woven into the rhythm of daily life. Without them, life would have scattered like smoke in the wind. And yet, within that discipline, there was tenderness. You can see it in the baker's steady hands, in the weaver's patient rhythm, in the way neighbors left bread at a door marked with fear. Each action was small, but together they built a kind of faith. Not faith in miracles, but faith in continuity. The medieval world was full of hardship, but it was also full of endurance. To live then was to trust. Trust in the pattern, trust in the morning. Trust that after the dark, the bell would ring again. They did not seek perfection. They sought stability, or they knew that peace was fragile, that comfort was temporary, and that the smallest flame could mean either warmth or ruin. So they treated life carefully, as one might hold a candle in the wind. Every generation lives by its own fears and finds its own ways to quiet them. Theirs were simple but deeply human. Rules gave shape to their fear. Faith gave meaning to their endurance. Through repetition they found rest. Through order they found hope. When you think of them now, do not see only darkness and superstition. See the quiet courage of ordinary people, making sense of an uncertain world. See the mother who taught her child to pray before sleep. See the craftsman who marked his tools with care. See the villager who whispered a blessing before covering the fire each night. These were not acts of ignorance, but of devotion. Small affirmations that life was worth tending even in the shadow of fear. History remembers kings and wars, but peace was built by those who followed the rules. Not out of blind obedience, but out of love for the fragile world they inhabited. Every careful act was a kind of hope. Every restriction a reminder that survival was communal. No one stood alone. And so, as we drift away from their time, we carry something of them with us. The understanding that order and care are often the same thing, that silence can be protection,
that rules, when born from need,
can hold the weight of kindness. The bells fade now, their echoes dissolving into the vastness of night. The fires sleep in their hearths.
The forest stands unmoving,
its branches black against the stars. Somewhere, a door closes softly, and the world exhales. The Middle Ages begin to fade, not vanishing, but resting, settling back into the long memory of time.
The rules that shape them drift like dust,
their meaning still glimmering faintly beneath the surface.
If you listen,
you can still hear the heartbeat beneath the silence, the rhythm of 1,000 small lives moving in unison, bound together by care and caution. They were not foolish, they were surviving. They built order from chaos, light from darkness, safety from fear. They built the slow foundation of the world we live in now. So let the images fade, the streets, the bells, the laws, the forest paths. Let them soften as dreams do when morning nears. The medieval world dissolves gently into night. Its rules have served their purpose.
And what remains is peace.
Now take a breath. slow, quiet, full. You are far from their world and yet close to their wisdom. The same sky stretches above the same stars, the same cycle of light and dark, work and rest, fear and calm. Time moves on, but the rhythm remains. The order they built still hums beneath our lives, subtle and steady. The need to belong, the wish to be safe, the hope that morning will come. These are the same. So breathe again. Let the bells fade in your mind. Let the fire sleep. Let the world of rules and ritual slip gently into silence. The night has come full circle. The story has folded into stillness, and you follow it into calm,
into dreams, into peace.
Good night.